Aloha, namaste. This is Alexis with Radha Home Yoga, and I'm here to talk about our lunar eclipse that's coming up in just a couple days here. This eclipse is part of a pair, so it's the first one, and we're going to have a solar eclipse in just 2 weeks on the new moon. And it's also the longest eclipse that we've had, or longest lunar eclipse we've had this century. So a lot of people are talking about it from all different directions, not just astrology. Where I live in Hawaii, it will be visible the whole time. We'll be able to see it. It's going to start at 8:02 p.m. And the high point, the max point where the most of the moon will be shadowed is going to be at 11:02 p.m. So not too late, not too much in the wee hours. The final end of the eclipse will be at 2:03 a.m. and that's going to be on November 19th. So it's beginning on November 18th and moving into November 19th, Hawaii time. I know some of you live in much later time zones. We're GMT -10 here. So we're one of the last time zones, or one of the later time zones. So for some of you, it'll be entirely on the 19th. And this is the last eclipse pair of this cycle that we're in, where the North Node and the South Node are in this Taurus Scorpio axis. The nodes are not actual physical bodies, right? They're mathematically calculated spaces in which there's a full moon or a new moon, there'll be an eclipse in those places. So every year and a half, we have an axis, a place where the North Node Rahu is and the South Node Ketu is. And they're holding space there basically until there's a fuller new moon. And at that point, the lineup of the moon, the earth, and the sun will come together in such a way that we will have either of the luminaries eclipsed, and it will be the luminary that's next to the node. So in the spring, we had our lunar eclipse in Scorpio and the solar eclipse in Taurus. And now we have the reverse of that. So we have our lunar eclipse in Taurus and our solar eclipse in Scorpio in just a few weeks. And this lunar eclipse is really bringing us to focus on our peace, our comfort, our security. These are all Taurus themes: the earth, food, nature, pleasure, enjoyment, and really allowing ourselves to move through each moment with our needs being met. This is the Taurus energy. And wherever the North Node is really where we're fixated. It's where we want to be. It's where our attention goes. It's also where we're not as intelligent. It's where we don't have the wisdom or the knowledge or even the willingness to listen to advice, or pay attention to the consequences of our actions. So we tend to have to do things again and again and again in this trial and error manner, and learn on our feet, and learn really by falling down and having to get back up again. So this is the energy of the North Node. The node has been here since September 28th of 2020. So we're at, like I said, the end of this cycle. So we've hopefully learned some things. And also the nodes are in a point of exaltation in this axis. Rahu likes being in Taurus because it's more grounded. Rahu has a very dispersive energy. It's very vata, it's very airy. And so this quality gets a little more earthed and grounded in Taurus. And it's not quite as dispersive. And it's a little bit more steady and patient, and perhaps even less delusional, just by virtue of Taurus being a very practical sign. It's an earth sign. It's the first earth sign, and it's where we feed ourselves. It's where we take care of ourselves. And that those simple actions keep us from getting ungrounded and sort of dispersing our energy all over the place and creating a lot of delusional scenarios, because we're less in our mind. We're more in our body. And the moon is also exalted in Taurus for the same reason. The moon is our mind, it's our emotions, and it has that tendency to be rolling, right? The moon is the graha, the planetary energy that moves the most. It's changing the most. And it's always trying to find something to kind of roll up against. And in Taurus, it has something to roll up against: the earth, eating, taking care of oneself, pleasure, enjoyment, and doesn't have to focus so much on the sort of drama, the ups and downs that can occur where the moon is debilitated in Scorpio, which is, the place where we have the most sort of drama and trauma and facing our fears and having all these ups and downs. So both the moon and Rahu being in a state of exaltation can help quite a bit in this situation. And then on the other end of that, we have the sun joined Ketu, the south node, getting ready for his eclipsing in just a couple of weeks. The sun enjoys being in Scorpio. It's a sign where we're able to illuminate our fears, we're able to illuminate our shadows. The sun is where we feel powerful, and it's where we are burning a light, and it can feel quite intense. It's actually considered a malefic graha because of the quality of burning and the fact that most of us don't really like to feel the heat that much. We don't always really want to illuminate everything. We actually kind of enjoy peace and comfort and feeling good and connection. And the sun doesn't always bring those things. But in Scorpio, where there's a lot hiding in the shadows and there's these sort of fears that have been stuffed down for so long, or these past traumas, things that, could come from PTSD or traumatic incidences that happen when we're young, we kind of hide them out and they become morphed into these giant dragons and demons and things that were like, blown way out of proportion. And when the sun is in Scorpio, we're able to kind of shine our light on those things and be like, okay, let's bring it out of the shadows, see what it is, see it for what it really is, burn away some of the obsession or some of the quality of high level paranoia and fear, the imaginary fears, and the exaggeration around it. And we can kind of bring it back down to size and deal with it in that way. So the sun is in good dignity. It's not in a state of exaltation, but it is in good dignity. And the sun is exalted in Mars's other sign of Aries. So there's that camaraderie of Mars and the sun working together. And Ketu, just like Rahu, is in its state of exaltation being in Scorpio, because Ketu is that really like laser sharp focus that we have that goes deep, 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 deep down into something. And the watery signs really allow that depth to happen. And what Ketu does is find like an exact point. It has all the wisdom, everything that Rahu doesn't have, Ketu has, because they were once one serpent and they were cut at the neck. So Rahu's just that big head with the open mouth, just taking in experience after experience after experience without digesting it. And Ketu is all the wisdom, all the knowledge, all that past experience, but no head, nothing to engage in the world, no interest. And there's also a very sort of critical quality, because whatever we already think we know, we're like, why do I even have to look at that? Why do I even have to know that? I'm obsessed with where Rahu is. Give me more of this Taurus thing, but I don't need to look at my past shadows. I've already done my shadow work, or I've already cleaned out my closets. I've already invited all my skeletons to the table. But wherever Ketu is showing us somewhere that we haven't quite done that. And there is something left to look at or to drag out of the back and bring to the light. And, in this case, because we're again at the end of that cycle, it's kind of like we've been sitting with this for a while. Ketu has an implosive quality, while Rahu is like a telescope or a magnifying glass, just exaggerating, making everything bigger. Ketu's like a microscope, like it's that little thing right there, that small detail. And we have probably had some stuff come up around this over the last year, that we've had this axis in play. So whatever area of life we're kind of avoiding, and if you don't know what house it is for you, what house Scorpio, what house Taurus is for you in your Vedic chart, you can do that. You can look that up. It's very easy to just Google a Vedic chart calculator and look that up for yourself. So you can find out what area of your life have you been focusing on and fixated on, and what area of your life have you been withdrawing from or not noticing or not paying attention to, because that's the area that's kind of going to explode, especially in our December eclipse that's coming right up in a couple weeks. So this is sort of the precursor event, and it's the one that in some ways feels more pleasant, right? Because the moon is exalted, it's Rahu, there's no other planets joined, and it's where we want to be putting our energy. So it's like lighting up what we want to be lighting up. And that feels good in many ways. That obsessive quality of Rahu keeps us fixated there. But we have to remember there's something bubbling underneath the surface. And since Scorpio is a water sign, but it's also a fiery water sign, it's ruled by Mars. And Ketu has a fiery quality and a cutting quality. It can be a little bit erratic and strange, but it's very, it's like where we just cut off and we're like, I don't care. You know, we can just easily dismiss and discard something wherever Ketu is because it's unimportant to us. That is going to come up and like bite us if we don't pay attention to it, if we don't do the work to really look and see what's underneath the surface. And that water and fire, water being the emotions, right? And fire being that illuminating quality that's also can burn, right? It can be very burning. It's our passion, it's our spiritual quality, it's our digestive quality, and it's underneath the water coming up. So we can see this in perhaps, you know, in earthly ways. We might see it actually in a geological sense. I think last year at this time, I said something like that, and there were some incidences where there were actually like eruptions coming up from under the water. One of the things here on the Big Island where I live was the caldera where the Kilauea volcano is. The lava came up underneath the water table at that time. So that's, you know, it can be geological. It can also be just metaphorical in our own lives, our fire coming up beneath our emotions, things that we've been kind of pushing down, like past stuff. That's really the reason why we have the different challenges we have in life coming up beneath the surface. And of course, societally also, we can see that. We can see that energy coming forward. And I'll talk about that a lot more in 2 weeks because it is going to be the big shift in 2 weeks. But I want to highlight that now because we're in this period right now and we still have this opportunity to kind of pay attention to both sides of things and not just fixate our energy on the part we want to, even if it's the more pleasant experience. So I'm going to share my screen here so we can see the chart and allow us to kind of dive into these nakshatras and what we're looking at here. So we can see the moon and Rahu are both in Krittika. And you can see why it's a partial eclipse because they're not in exact degrees, but it's very close. I mean, they're not far away. It's 3 degrees, 7 degrees. So it's going to be mostly eclipsed. The moon will be mostly eclipsed. And an eclipse in a astrological sense is this literally the luminary, the moon, right? And the story of the nodes is like that basically they were ratted out. This one serpent that was whole was ratted out to Vishnu by the moon and the sun. And Vishnu cut it with his discus in half, or not in a full half, one head and one neck and serpent tail. And as a result, the nodes are always chasing the moon and the sun, right? They're always eclipsing them. But the moon is our mind and our emotions. And so when the node eclipsing that mind and emotions, it's a blackout. It's a reset of being able to feel what we're supposed to, what we're feeling. Now in Rahu's case, it's the north node. It's opening new karma. It's expanding, it's exaggerating. It's creating a situation where we think something is bigger than it is and more than it is. The quality of Taurus will greatly bring this down. This is a grounding energy, as I said before. And the star of Krittika is a very interesting star to have this in. Krittika actually has a lot of the qualities of Ketu. Krittika is a decisive star. It's an incisive star. It's a star of separation. It's the cutter or the divider. There's the story of Krittika is the birth of Mars itself, the birth of Kartikeya, the son of Shiva and Parvati, and also the son of the wives of the sages. So in the story, Mars is born as a result of this woman, Swaha, this nymph who's obsessed with Agni. She's obsessed with fire, and Agni rules this star as well. The fire god rules this star. And because she can't have him, but she sees that when he sits in the fire, he is obsessed with the wives of the sages sitting around his fire. So she personifies each of these wives and makes love to him and then deposits their seed in this lake cauldron. And then Shiva and Parvati are also making love, trying to create this warrior child to defeat this demon, Tarakasura. And that seed gets deposited, it gets carried into this same lake. And eventually Kartikeya is born, this fiery red child. And the wives of the sages get cut off. They get divorced, separated from their partners because they believe that they actually, slept with Agni, even though it was really Swaha personifying them. So they're cast off to the stars and they become what we know in the Western world usually as the Pleiades. And here in Hawaii, this is actually the Makahili, and they are the star that marks the beginning of Makahiki, which is our rainy season or the season of rest and play, and a time to put down all weapons and time to put down all items of war and go into sport and fun. And because it's raining, it's not a time for working in the fields or anything like that anymore. So that's kind of a side note, but it's a very significant star. And so back to the story, Kartikeya is born of this sort of tumultuous energy and this fiery energy. But that quality of dividing and cutting off happens not just with the wives being divorced from their sage partners, their sage husbands, but also Kartikeya himself then has to divide himself, because after he's born and these disowned ladies of the sages are nurse him to health, everybody wants him because he becomes this really epic warrior. At 7 days old, he goes in and fights Tarakasura and defeats the whole army. So then Shiva wants him, Parvati wants him, the Ganges wants him because she carried him there. Boom Devi, the earth, wants him because he was deposited down to earth in the story. The wives want him. Everybody wants claim to this child. And so he divides himself. So there's this quality of divisive, and there's also a quality of incisive, where there's insight and clarity. If you think of fire as being something that illuminates, that allows us to see, it's literally related to our eyes, the element of fire. And so we're able to illuminate and see something more clearly, and we're able to cut to the point. And this is the exact placement where the moon is exalted in Taurus for that reason, because we can kind of cut through all the delusion and illusion and Maya that happens, even without Rahu being there, right? Even without Rahu's illusionary quality, we have just emotions are like that. The quality of our mind and emotions are always moving, like I said in the beginning, always trying to find something to stack against, always sort of changing. And Krittika lets us cut through the crap, for lack of a better word, and see clearly. So in this case, it's interesting because we have Rahu there, right? And Rahu doesn't do that. Rahu creates more of that. Rahu's like, it's like this, and it's this delusion, and it's this delusion. It's expanding and dispersing and creating more Maya. So more illusion. So there's that dichotomy here, right? And in many ways, it's the dichotomy itself that can help us find some clarity, that quality of polarity. And if you think of Ketu as really having a lot of these Krittika qualities, right? It's the cutting nature, it's the fiery nature, it's the, willingness to just walk away from something. It also has an erratic quality that Krittika doesn't have quite as much, but fire does have some level of erratic. There's an erraticism to fire, just in that it can spark off and things like that. But anyway, Ketu has more of those similar qualities there. And it's in a star called Anuradha. And Anuradha is the star after Radha. And Radha is the pure symbol of devotion, right? The symbol of devotion towards the beloved, towards Krishna. She is willing to put aside any earthly concerns, even concerns for her own well-being, in order to serve her love. And she's married to another man, because she's a gopi, she's a milkmaid, and Krishna is raised in this little town with her, and they get to know each other when they're small. But then he has to go to Dwarka, he has to go to the large city and live in the palace and be a king. And so he has many wives in his kingdom, and she's still living back in Vrindavan as a gopi. And once Krishna falls ill, everybody's called to serve him. The doctors say the only thing that will heal him is if somebody will take dust off the ground and place it on his forehead. And no one will do that. because it's going to bring more karma. It's going to create more samskaras for them. And they're going to be stuck more in this wheel of mortality, of coming back and having more life and more birth and more death and more life and more birth and more birth, more life than death. And no one wants to risk that. No one wants to risk all the efforts they've put in to clear their karma. But Radha does not even think about it. She rushes right in, just does exactly what the doctor says. And in that moment, she's freed. She's freed from her earthly concerns because she didn't even care about that. She wasn't even fixated on becoming enlightened or moving out of the wheel of time. She didn't even care about that. It was all this one-pointed fixation, right? Which is interesting because there is a quality of one-pointedness with Ketu, and certainly with where the sun is in Vishaka, which I'll talk about in a second. But the devotion is not there, right? The quality of love and just utterly the focus being that love. She's the ultimate bhakta. If you want to be a bhakta, you have to follow Radha, actually, more than Krishna. You want to be like her because she's the one who's merging with him. And so that level of devotion is more similar to the obsession quality of Rahu in some ways, where it's like a fixation, and it's a turning something into something bigger than it is and multiplying it, making it more, right? And yet we have Ketu here in Anuradha with that cutting quality, with that quality that is willing to cut off and does not care. And does not have that nurturance and love. So again, we have that polarity, we have that dichotomy of the node being in a star that's quite different energetically from it. While a sharp blade is representative of Krittika, Anuradha is a flower at the end of a finish line, a lotus flower. And Vishaka, is the finish line itself. So Vishaka is the star right before Anuradha, and it's from Libra into Scorpio. And you can see here Mercury is actually in Vishaka as well at the end there. And both Mercury and Mars are very close to the sun. So they're combust. There's some fire burning up both Mars and Mercury, which I'll talk about in a minute as well. But Vishaka is where we have one-pointed vision. It's the part at the end of Libra where we really start to take our own path, and we enter through the woods knowing we are alone, right? Knowing we are here alone and we have to do this. And we're willing to put in that work for the long haul. So Vishaka is represented by these sort of triumphant quality of a gateway or a tree that's gotten old enough, mature enough to have big branches that shade humanity. It's shown by a potter's wheel where over time and patience, we're able to create something beautiful. So there's fruits that develop over time with Vishaka. But it very well might have originally been called Radha. It's the star right before Anuradha, and Anuradha is after Radha. And they have a quality of being like a pair as well, Vishaka and Anuradha. So we take that long, one-pointed path. And just like in meditation, if you're familiar with the Ashtanga, with the 8 limbs of yoga, there's a part where we fixate on something to begin with. Maybe you do, a meditation on a flame, or maybe you meditate on your breath. You start with that sort of Vishaka quality of focusing on something, and then you're able to merge with it. And then you start to merge with all things, which is Samadhi. And that's more like what Radha is doing, merging with the one, merging with source, merging with everything that is. So this one-pointed path leads into a one-pointed devotion where it's not about you anymore. And it's about God, literally, or energy or love or whatever word works for you, and is allowed to enter your brain. So the sun being in this place in Vishaka, and having just entered into Scorpio, just entered into sidereal Scorpio, is giving us this opportunity, like I said, to illuminate and to allow us to bring out things out of the shadows that might have been keeping us off our path and might have been keeping us from our pure devotion, might be keeping us in our selfish state. Oftentimes, when people feel a lot of feelings of depression and anxiety and things like that, it's because they're actually stuck in their own state, in their own mind. And this is the place where the sun is right now, where the moon is debilitated in that early part of Scorpio. When we're fixated on our own stories, our own shadows, our own stuff, that's when we feel the most sad. And if we pull ourselves up out of that and have more of a fixation on something outside of us, preferably not something human or not something we're hoping to get for ourselves, but a more pure, unconditional drive towards finding love, God, energy, something like that. That's when we're able to pull ourselves up out of our despair. So this eclipse and this cycle in general, this period we're in is very interesting on many different levels. And it's bringing up a lot of different things for us. And it doesn't feel comfortable, right? We're just coming out of the sun being debilitated itself in Libra, where we were giving away our power to too many people. And we have Mars still here in Libra, and Mars is in a star called Swati. It's like the middle of Libra, where we're really trying to everybody's in our way. Everybody's trying to keep us down. Everybody is keeping us from our discipline. Everyone else is keeping us from our courage. Everyone else is keeping us from achieving what we need to achieve. And we're having to wrestle with that. Plus with the combustion, the closeness, the close proximity to the sun, our fuse is short, and we might be getting angry on a dime at others because it's Libra. And Mercury, being close to Mars and being combust, we might not feel heard. And sometimes our words might be kind of cutting or harsh or sharp, even though Mercury generally enjoys being in Libra because of that sort of harmonious communication, that kind communication, that desire to connect. But it's being disrupted. It's being disrupted by both the proximity to the sun and by the proximity to Mars and being in the same sign as Mars. So maybe we're trying to connect, but then we do something really short and cutting that's abrasive to people. Mars in Libra is very abrasive. It doesn't feel good. It's not connective. And so, between the star of Krittika, it is a place of exaltation for the moon, but it's not a place, for example, we want the moon if we were getting married. We wouldn't want to plan something that was going to be soft and nourishing and lovely in this place because it's a harsh nakshatra. It's a cutting nakshatra. And the soft nakshatra we're reckoning with here, Anuradha, is where Ketu is, which is not a soft graha, right? It's the cutting, harsh graha that explodes from beneath the surface. So we might be feeling a lot of push and pull about wanting to connect, not wanting to connect, cutting it off. Like it's confusing. It's a confusing time. And the nodes on the luminaries is literally that. It's confusing. It's confusing what we feel. It's confusing what our power comes from. It's all very confusing. And our goal, our job, our mission right now is to sit with that, to sit with all the discomfort, to sit with the unknowing, to sit with it all. And hopefully as we pass through these portals, find some space and time to meditate or to drop in with yourself and to not have so much noise and chaos around you, to not be doing all the errands and all the to-do lists and all the things we have to do that we feel like we have to do for other people because Mars is there. And start to allow ourselves to really feel what is and let things come up from underneath the surface. So if you have a tendency towards covering up your feelings with substances or even practices, sometimes we use our practices, our breath work, our yoga to avoid things. If we can sit with which is uncomfortable and just allow it to be and not try to fix it right away, not to try to make it better, but just allow it to be however weird and awkward and strange it feels and is, that's going to help us have this stuff really surface and help clear the way for this eclipse in 2 weeks, which is guaranteed to be even more uncomfortable. Suffice it to say. So we do have Venus here, which is the ruler of Mars, Mercury, and the moon, right? Venus is the ruler of Libra and the ruler of Taurus. So all of these planets being affected by where Venus is. And where's Venus? In Sagittarius. Venus in Sagittarius is the classic sort of spiritual bypassing. It's like, oh yes, your problems can be solved by this, philosophy. Oh, your problem isn't real, or whatever the different ways that we approach this. But it's beautiful to have philosophies that are high and teachings that lead us on the way. And that's what Jupiter's job is. But Venus's job is to relate to people. and to recognize their humanity and their struggles, and to compromise and to allow things to be down to earth and fair. And so in Sagittarius, sometimes we override that and we can get a little bypassy. Furthermore, the ruler of Venus, Jupiter, is still in those final degrees of debilitation. Fortunately, on the 20th, so just the day after the eclipse comes to its final end, Jupiter is going to transit back into Aquarius. We had Jupiter in Aquarius in April of this year, and he was there until September of this year, albeit retrograde from June to September. So now he's going to be back in Aquarius, and we're going to see some more movement here with our beliefs and our hopes. They got stagnated again when he got back into Capricorn, and a lot more fear-based again, and everything became more of this have to and this sort of life and death and constricted and contracted philosophies that don't really lead to us feeling hopeful or inspired or even connecting to source at all. But Jupiter in Aquarius will have that movement, that quality of air, that quality of being able to think outside the box. And can we approach the things that we see wrong in society in a different way? It's definitely a placement where we have more feeling of social obligation, more of a desire to empower the powerless, more social awareness and consciousness and activism available, and highlighting corruption, really seeing corruption, especially as he passes through Shatabishak, which we'll be in a little bit. So we have all these placements kind of creating some discomfort, some change, some sort of, evolution going on. And Saturn is just still holding court there, just still in Shravana right now, just listening, hearing, and reminding us that in the end, none of this is really, these are all these battles we fight, but they're part of the illusion. They're part of the Leela. They're part of the play. And we're all going to die one day anyway. We're all getting older. Every day we're getting older. Every day we're getting more sick. We're getting more weak, and to get too attached to anything that we're fighting for or wanting to love or wanting relationships or wanting within ourselves, our own achievements, that all of it's just a moot point, that in the end, it just is what it is. And if we can just accept that and live in this place of accepting our own solitude on earth, we'll be okay. So Saturn's our kind of friendly reminder that, not so friendly reminder of this state that we're in reality, not being actually real, that most of what we're experiencing as reality is not even real. And who cares? Because you're going to die anyway. So that's our steadfast planet at the moment. And he is offering some wisdom to Jupiter by being joined. So some of the debilitation is being, affected by that. But one of the things that's going to happen come the December 4th eclipse is Mars is going to march into his own sign of Scorpio right after the eclipse. And so we'll see, we'll see a lot more strength and power coming to the table, a lot more of our tenacity, our courage, our discipline, the qualities that help us do that work to get less attached. Mars still being in Libra, there's still a lot of, confusion with relationships and how to even be disciplined or how to act for ourselves, because we have to constantly do things for other people. So it can still be a little bit challenging and confusing to do the things we need to do, the actual physical steps we need to do in order to experience that. And it's one of the things that's so beautiful about the Vedic system and specifically yoga, which was my entry point into it, is there's something to do. There's actions to take in order to achieve your spiritual state, in order to connect to God. There's physical practices you can do and dietary choices you can make and things you can do to allow yourself to be more connected, to feel better. Why the moon is exalted in Taurus, things you can do to feel better, like eat healthy and eat at specific times, solid times, consistent times throughout the day. These are things you can do to ground yourself, discipline yourself, do exercise every day for yourself first. Take care of yourself, your own body temple first before anything else. Clear your mind, meditate before you have conversations, before all your triggers and wounds come up. There's so many things that it offers us that if we're following that path, we're already kind of halfway there. right? We have mantras to clear our mind junk. We have exercises, we have breath work, we have meditation practices, we have dietary choices. There's so many things we can do. Plus we can even know a map. We can use Jyotish, the science of light, to illuminate what's going on, where we are, where we're going, and give us a sense of okayness with it all, which is what I really love about this particular science, is that it's like, it gives us permission to just experience what we're experiencing. Like, yes, this is what's happening right now. And it isn't always comfortable and it doesn't always feel good. And it's not supposed to. The times that are challenging are the times that evolve us faster. They're the times that allow us to move closer to Sanatana Dharma, closer to our eternal truth, which is ultimately what we're trying to experience. We're not just here to feel pleasure and happiness and enjoyment and relationships and love and children and possessions and home. We're not here for that. We're here for the real deal, the real peace, the real comfort, the real love. And times like these help us find that. So I hope this is helpful for you. Please, like, comment, share if you enjoy it. And if you haven't yet signed up for my newsletter, you can do that at www.radhahomeyoga.com. And there you'll receive 3 instant reports, which will help you with these alignments. Jupiter in Capricorn for all 12 signs this is the last run of that, because like I said, Jupiter's moving out of Capricorn right after this eclipse. So I'll probably go back to sending Jupiter in Aquarius or something like that. But we also have Mars combust for all 12 signs. That's also going to stop sending very soon, because Mars will not be combust anymore as of the very end of this month. I think the 27th is the date of November, where he finally kind of moves out of that close proximity to the sun. So last chance to receive those 2, and maybe even just review what you've been going through over the last 3 or 4 months. And then the nodes, Rahu Taurus in Scorpio, Rahu and Taurus, Ketu in Scorpio for all 12 signs. Super important to know where that is in your chart, what houses are imploding beneath the surface, where you're fixated, and really get a grip on that, because it's very important. And it's also important to know what, Mercury is going to be there. What is Mercury for you? If you're a Gemini rising or a Virgo rising, that's your ruling planet. So that's in the fray. If you're a Sagittarius or a Pisces rising, it's your 7th Lord. So, it's going to have to do with your relationships. So it's important to know what each of these, what's being affected, what house it's being affected. If you're a Taurus rising or a Scorpio rising, it's your 1st house and your 7th house. It's literally your identity and your partnership. If you're Taurus, and reverse, partnership first and then identity, implosion if you're Scorpio rising. If you're a Leo person, this is happening in your 4th house of home, the December eclipse. Something could explode in your home situation that gives you peace. And the other side is your career, where you're focusing all your energy on your career, but meanwhile you're losing your house. That it's really, really important to know where this is happening in your chart. So if you don't have those yet, you should sign up for my newsletter and get that. I almost forgot to say that I am still running my 30-minute recorded reading special. So if you've been really interested in getting a reading, maybe, haven't been ready to commit to a full reading yet, I'm doing 30-minute audio recordings for people on this specific transit that's going on right now. And I'm booking them through December 4th, through the day of the solar eclipse. So you can reach out to me on private message, or you can go to radhahomeyoga.com, go to the contact link, and let me know, and we can book you a 30-minute reading special. Normally, I only offer these for people who've been previous clients, just because there's a lot in someone's chart, and it's good to, have already gone through someone's chart with them. But due to the intensity of these times, I want to offer everybody a chance to really see what's going on right now and how they can work with those energies. So this special is just for a limited time. I had a huge outpouring response from my first launch 2 weeks ago on the new moon, where I put out this offer. So I'm still actually catching up with the readings, but I am booking them through December 4th. And if you would like to get yours, reach out to me. It's $50 for the 30-minute reading. Usually there's $65 for those 30-minute readings. And again, I usually only do them for previous clients. So hope that is helpful, and happy eclipsing. Namaste.